please tell me, Jesus, what in your experience when the pandemic hit, where did you turn for help? Then did you get a PPL loan, or tell me what happened?
Uh, all right. So I one of the things that I do is I've done it for a long time, and it helped when the pandemic hit, but I didn't do
Hmm.
it in case of a pandemic. But it now showed everybody why you have to do this. So I often tell people politics drives business, drives politics. It's kind of a yin and a yang, and I draw this circle. And if
Hmm.
you're in business, you're in politics, and if you're in politics, you're in business. You don't get a choice. Every business owner needs to know at a minimum your local reps, state reps, your congressmen, your city council people. You need to pay them regular visits. You need to help them. You need to request help from them. You need to be at meetings. I happen to be very, very politically involved, and all the way up to the federal level. So
Okay.
I'll tell you how it paid off.
Yeah.
So when we got hit, so one of the things, I was in the army for 20 years. I was all over the world, 5 times to Iraq. I spent 5 years in Korea, spent a year in Bosnia. The rest of the world has pandemics all the time. It's just America that's relatively inoculated. So I was dragging my staff through things 30 days prior to America kind of getting ready. I was beta testing systems, this whole Zoom thing we're doing. No one was doing Zoom at the time. I was kicking people out of the office. We were doing all this stuff. And even my general manager at the time was looking at me kind of weird, like, this dude's a doomsday prepper. What's wrong with him? And so we were working from home 3.5 weeks prior to March 14th. This is kind of a big date because March 14th was the first day Lenny Curry ever had actually had a meet or press conference for the city of Jacksonville. We were already working from home. And so cut to the chase, that's kind of when everybody started being like, wow, what is this guy Jesus know? Why is he so far ahead of us on this whole pandemic deal? Well, I had saw this stuff happen in all the other countries. Not this specific one, but stuff like this.
Okay.
So I prepared my staff, right? Um, so well, as a small business owner, 100% owner, self-financed, I'm happen to be in one of those industries that banking just doesn't like. I'm also a real estate investor
Okay.
primarily, and I was an investor prior to '08 and prior to Dodd-Frank. And I hope this audience can kind of understand what that is. So prior to '08, when we had the financial crash, everybody was getting home loans. They were just lending money to anybody. I remember a friend of mine who
Yeah.
was working literally 2 weeks at Dunkin' Donuts, who a friend of mine that I knew, who was working for literally had a job for 2 weeks, got a home loan for $125,000, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was an investor at the time. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And this is what happened with all those loans and that went bad, and they were betting and hedging against those type of loans going bad, which is what happened when we had credit default swaps, which led us to the downturn. But we had actually, and I'm a business owner and I'm a pro free market guy, we had
Yeah.
probably the best piece of legislation, which was Dodd Frank, that made it harder to lend. And now I'm actually on the downside of that because transportation is one of those industries that you can't hardly get any money out of the banks. All right, so
Mm.
which here's the 10-year effect of that. I don't have a good banking relationship to this day. I just don't have a good banking relationship. They don't like to lend for transportation. And so there's really no need for me to have a good banking relationship. I have a good private equity relationship. I don't have a good banking
Mm.
relationship. So what happened with the pandemic? The pandemic hit, and small and minority owned businesses got less than 2% of the first iteration of PPP. Meanwhile, people like the LA Lakers got $5 million. All right. I happen to have a personal relationship with Congressman Rutherford.
Okay.
And I actually I was called into a meeting, and I had to show them, in addition to just small and disadvantaged businesses and women owned businesses, all of the people that don't have really good banking relationships. We don't have 20-year relationships with banking presidents and all that. I had to show them how a lot of your small businesses don't have the leverage to have a bunch of W-2 relationships. We have to do these strategic partnerships with other people that provide us services in order to get the same thing accomplished. And we don't have the same command and control over those people, but we still pay them. But the way they wrote the language in PPP version 1, we didn't qualify because it was all W-2. So I actually
Hmm.
wrote a white paper and gave a class to a few Congress people and a few local reps, but a few Congress people. And they actually took that back to Congress. And Congressman Rutherford actually came back to my office recently and told my whole staff and told a bunch of people, hey, Jesus is actually the one that showed us that and gave us a white paper. And we took it back and everybody was like, oh, okay. And when they opened it up, PPP version 2, the floodgates opened for small businesses. I'm not saying I did it, but I was definitely a contributor by having existing relationships with congresspersons, city council persons, and politicians. So there was a prime example on why if you're in business, you're in politics, and you need to be involved or you need to have relationships with the people who craft legislation who may not have ever owned a business. A lot of the reasons why it's hard for me to have relationships with like SBA folks and all the people that are supposed to be the subject matter experts is because they actually never owned a business. And they may not actually have the same level of passion that I have behind the sinking, drowning weightlessness of having to make payroll, which I just cracked 300 weeks in a row. That's something we celebrate as a business owner, right? Without missing one. That right there is really hard to swallow when I'm having to get my information from someone who never owned a business. I understand maybe a subject matter expert, but everything is expedited when it comes to us because we got to make payroll. So the lesson of all of this is how did I do it? I was able to help others. So one of the things I did, I'm actually a general contractor. I actually didn't pay myself for 9 months during COVID because I didn't want to let anybody go. I had a couple of young girls with me at the time. This was prior to anybody getting PPP, prior to anybody. Trump hadn't cut any checks yet, which I think we needed to get a few. I think we got a couple too many, but we needed to get a few. And the market was looking kind of reckless for a few people. And I didn't want to let these young girls go out to the market because I didn't know what they were going to do. I went out and started doing all kinds of stuff. I was doing we were doing roofing and construction. I was doing all because I'm an entrepreneur. And I ended up, taking care of myself for 9 months and not taking a paycheck from my own company while feeding everybody in my company, while revenues plummeted almost 90%.